stick of gum, right?
No?
No. Red light, green light. You come up against a lock you can't pick, you mash them together. Hasta lasagna, don't get any on you.
Good morning, Mr. Phelps. The man you're looking at is Alexander Golitsyn, an attaché at our embassy in Prague. He is also a traitor. He has stolen one half of a CIA knock list, a record of all our deep cover agents working in Eastern Europe. Your mission, Jim, should you choose to accept it, is to obtain photographic proof of the theft, shadow Golitsyn to his buyer, and apprehend them both. I've already dispatched a team selected from your usual group, and Ethan Hunt will be your point man, as usual. He is now in Kiev and will rendezvous in Prague at a safe house of your choosing. As always, should you or any member of your IM force be caught or killed, the Secretary will disavow all knowledge of your actions. This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Good luck, Jim.
We're being ambushed, Ethan. Abort, that's an order.
They knew we were coming, man. They knew we were coming, and the disc is gone.
This whole operation was a mole.
Yeah.
Kittredge assumes I'm the mole they've been tracing, and I've been in the employ of an arms dealer, Max, for the last 2 years. To get him our knock list.
Let's not waste time chasing after him. Just make him come to us. Everybody has pressure points, Barnes. You find something that's personally important to him, and you squeeze.
Simple game. 4 players.
Inside CIA headquarters at Langley. Is this serious?
Always.
It's much worse than you think.
In the early summer of 1996, Mission Impossible arrived on the big screen. Produced on a large budget of $80 million, it broke box office records in the USA within its first 6 days of release, beating the record holder Jurassic Park. It eventually went on to gross over $450 million worldwide. Paramount Studios promoted it heavily during the summer of '96, with the theatrical trailer pretty much showing you all the action sequences in the film. However, with little action throughout the movie, you can see how difficult it was creating an intense action trailer without giving too much away. The trailer also includes scenes of Ethan and Claire kissing, which was deleted from the final film. The posters, however, were particularly bland, just showing you the side of Tom Cruise's head. This level of unoriginality has plagued movie posters for decades and wasn't new for the time, but became far more frequent in the following years. The movie is loosely based on the classic 60s Mission Impossible show that ran from 1966 to 1973 and was brought back in 1988 for 2 seasons. It chronicles the missions of a team of secret government agents known as the Impossible Missions Force, IMF. In the first season, the team is led by Dan Briggs, and from season 2, Jim Phelps takes charge. The mechanisms by which the IMF receives their missions and the masks they use to impersonate people were used frequently throughout the show. These 2 key elements are the only elements that appear to have been translated to the movie series. Paramount Pictures owned the rights to produce the movie, but for years nothing was ever put in motion. Tom Cruise was a huge fan of the series, and with co-producer Paula Wagner, he approached Paramount with an offer. When a deal was struck for an $80 million budget, Tom set out for a director to helm his first dabble as a producer. Sidney Pollack worked together with co-producer Paula Wagner to craft a story, whilst Cruise approached the famous director Brian De Palma, who was well known for his films Scarface, The Untouchables and Carlito's Way. It would take a fair number of rewrites and contributions from screenwriters such as David Koepp and Robert Towne in order to get a script the team was happy with. Apple Computer had a $15 million promotion linked to the film, seeing the placement of Apple personal computers throughout the movie, mainly their new range of laptops. This was an attempt on Apple's part to improve their image after posting a $740 million loss. At this time, Steve Jobs was not in charge, and the company was a mess. The operating system and software on the laptops don't resemble the Mac OS from the time, but I think they did a good job creating a unique search engine. However, it does fundamentally date the movie. There were rumours on set that Cruise and De Palma did not get along. With Tom Cruise producing, he had far more say in the creative process. There may have been a conflict regarding its style and the amount of action, but it's really hard to know what transpired on set or in the final edit of the movie. This resulted in Brian De Palma excusing himself at the last moment from scheduled media interviews before the film's theatrical release, and he never provided an audio commentary to the series or openly discussed the problems on set. With its story, after the opening sequence we see Jim Phelps, the only returning character from the original show, played by legendary actor Jon Voight. Jim is given the next mission for his IMF team, the Impossible Missions Force, and they are assigned to retrieve the IMF knock list, which is a non-official cover list from the American Embassy in Prague. He meets his fellow teammates at a safe house and they discuss their actions for the mission. We meet Jim's wife Claire, played by Emmanuelle Berthe. She is a famous French actress and this will be her biggest break in a big budget Hollywood movie, although she has mainly focused on her career in France. Jim's point man, Ethan Hunt, a character created for the movie, is played by Tom Cruise. Ethan has proven very successful in the field and is not easily fooled. He is very complicated and not easy to read, but he maintains a level of charm that helps him get close to others for his own advantage. Jack the tech expert, played by Emilio Estevez, demonstrates how to use various gadgets and the now classic chewing gum explosive. Finally, Sarah, played by famous British actress Kristin Scott Thomas, assists Ethan in his mission. Kristin came to many people's attention for her performance in 4 Weddings and a Funeral and The English Patient. As they attempt to obtain photographic evidence of the theft and apprehend the buyer of the second half of the knock list, the mission goes horribly wrong, and all the IMF team bar Ethan Hunt are eliminated by an unknown team. Ethan makes contact with IMF and is surprised to hear director Eugene Kittredge is in Prague. Kittredge is played by Henry Czerny. He has appeared in dozens of TV movies and popped up in the A-Team film, The Exorcism of Emily Rose and The Pink Panther. Ethan heads to a meeting place and learns the job was a setup designed to lure out a mole within IMF, whom IMF believes to be in contact with an arms dealer known as Max as part of Job 314. As Ethan appears to be the only member left, Kittredge accuses him of being the mole, and Ethan flees using his handy explosive gum. Ethan returns to the safe house and deduces Job 314 in fact refers to the Bible verse Job 3:14, Job being the mole's code name. In realising this, Hunt attempts to set up a meeting with Max. Ethan's team member Claire later returns to the safe house, explaining how she escaped the bomb after Phelps aborted the mission. Ethan remains dubious about her survival. Hunt meets with Max under the guise of Job. Max is played by Vanessa Redgrave, despite the role originally being written to be played by a man. Vanessa is a hugely respected actress and has been working in the industry since the late 50s. Ethan warns her that the list she possesses has a tracking device that will alert the CIA to their position, and just as the CIA arrive, Hunt, Max and her agents escape. Ethan promises to deliver the real list for $10 million, but he wants the identity of Job. Hunt recruits 2 disavowed IMF agents, computer agent Luther Stickle, played by Ving Rhames, the only other cast member to return for the sequels, and pilot Franz Krieger, played by popular French actor Jean Reno, who just hit it big with English-speaking audiences in Leon the Professional. They have to take part in the ultimate impossible mission to infiltrate CIA headquarters and steal the real knock list. Rob Bottin provides his talents with the makeup for the classic face moulds the IMF team used to impersonate others. I always thought CGI was used to blend the transitions of one face to another, but apparently not. This really demonstrates the talents of Rob Bottin and his team. The makeup effects work pretty much works flawlessly. One of my favourite stunts out of all the films, despite its small scale in terms of what is seen in the recent movies, is the explosion at the restaurant. The way it's shot and lit makes it such an epic sequence, and Tom does it all for real. In the behind the scenes footage you see it happen so quickly, and it's only done once, so Tom had to escape on cue to successfully get the shot. The sequence that sees the team break into the computer room at Langley was a great achievement in wirework and practical stunts. Timing Tom's fall so he just avoids hitting the ground is great timing. One slight error could have seen Tom slamming his face into the ground. The train sequence is definitely the most ambitious sequence of the film. ILM had a huge challenge of visually achieving the intensity of the film's finale. Additional help from CineSight and Computer Film Company were needed to help complete the large amount of work needed. ILM contributed 150 shots to the breathtaking train sequence, most of them achieved with the Silicon Graphics workstation. At Pinewood Studios, the actors performed against blue screen on a stationary full-scale locomotive set, while a parachute fan outside created a genuine 160-mile-per-hour gale force wind. Aided by the powerful wind and strong off-camera tugs on his flying harness, Cruise did his own death-defying flips and lunges on set. Tom Cruise flew on wires for the shot in which Hunt loses his grip and hurtles down the entire length of the locomotive, crashing feet first into Phelps. Background plates of the real landscape passing behind the train were shot in Scotland, and ILM digitally matted in the tunnel. For the explosion of the helicopter in the tunnel, an 8th scale miniature was created, and for the final iconic shot of Ethan flying towards camera, they hung Tom on wires in front of a blue screen and flung him towards the camera with on-set flickering lights to match the miniature background plate. Danny Elfman composed a score to Mission Impossible and does a great job updating the main theme. In my opinion, he provides the best version of the theme out of the series, and also a soundtrack that sets the mood and captures the atmosphere and tone of the film. It doesn't sound like his traditional scoring, and at first you might think it wasn't Danny composing, but there's the odd cue that gives off his familiar sound, which can be heard in his collaborations with Tim Burton. Alan Silvestri was originally hired, but due to creative differences, Danny Elfman replaced him. There are bootlegs available of Silvestri's score floating around online, and it certainly sounds different. You can tell why they thought his approach wasn't suited to this style of movie. For the end titles, U2 bandmates Larry Mullen Jr. and Adam Clayton provided a remix of the classic theme tune. Larry and Adam were fans of the TV show and knew the original theme very well. Adam put together his own version in New York City, and Larry did his in Dublin on weekends between U2 recording sessions. The song has that mid-90s sound to it, and surprisingly still sounds great today, far better than that awful Limp Bizkit song. The Mission Impossible remix entered the top 10 charts around the world, and was nominated for the Grammy for Best Pop Instrumental Performance in '97, and was a critical and commercial success. A Danny Elfman score can be downloaded via iTunes, or you can grab a physical copy off eBay for a cheap price. The soundtrack was produced in large numbers, so it isn't that difficult to track down. It's definitely worth adding to your collection. Ocean Software was planning a video game adaptation for the Super Nintendo and Mega Drive. It was a 2D adventure game looking a bit like Flashback. During development, the popularity of the 16-bit consoles was dwindling, and many gamers had moved on to the PlayStation and Nintendo 64. As a result, it was decided to cancel the current version and move on to the next generation consoles. With the huge success of GoldenEye, the announcement of Mission Impossible got fans super excited, with many of them expecting a similar style of game. Screenshots did indicate a similar style of approach, and the hype started building up. Mission Impossible for the N64 ended up trying to be many different styles of games in one, making for an uneven experience. It was a third-person adventure game with first-person gameplay thrown in. The majority of the game centres around completing tasks undetected or disguised. The player can choose from a wide variety of weapons and gadgets, including pistols and automatic weapons. On selected missions, they are given the explosive gun and the face maker from the movie. As Ocean didn't have the license to use Tom Cruise's face and many of the actors from the film, it's only loosely based on themes of the film, and includes a few levels that seem inspired by the movie. Unlike most other shooters of the time, the gameplay often requires the player to exercise caution and restraint in carrying out mission objectives. In many missions, outright use of violence is discouraged or even penalised, and it is easy to fail a mission by accidentally shooting the wrong person. It was later ported to the PlayStation with additional voiceover work and better music thanks to the CD storage. When the game came out for the N64, my friend was desperate to have it and even skipped school to pick it up on release, and was so disappointed with it. It got very mixed reviews. The graphics, especially on the N64, looked fuzzy and blurred, and its gameplay mechanics were very clunky. I think they were being far too ambitious at the time. Due to the stop-start delays with the game's production, it didn't arrive till 1998, and would be Ocean's last release before they were bought out by Infogrames. In 2000, Infogrames released a version to the Game Boy Color, which was also a loose adaptation of the film, but obviously didn't take on a 3D perspective and was a 2D top-down adventure game. There are some fans of the N64 and PlayStation release, and if you were ever intrigued to play it but never got the chance, you can easily pick it up off eBay, but don't pay too much for them. With the success of Mission Impossible, a sequel would be inevitable. MI2 turned up 4 years later, directed by John Woo, and appears to address the lack of action that was apparent in the first film. And with a high-profile action director, you were given what the advertising implied, and plenty of bloody doves. It was way over the top and had little story for you to be invested in, slumping heavily in the middle of the film. With a huge budget and big marketing campaign, it was highly successful, but bared little resemblance to the original film. It went in a totally different direction, resulting in very mixed reviews. It didn't feel like a Mission Impossible film, and was very much a vehicle for Tom Cruise to show off what he can do, and his new hairstyle. I found this film laughably silly and boring at the same time. Granted, it has some well-executed action scenes thanks to John Woo, and the shot when Tom Cruise finally defeats Dougray Scott always impressed me. It's like something out of Street Fighter 2. The original running time for the film was apparently over 3 hours, and was heavily trimmed down to 2 hours by the studio with the help of famous editor Stuart Baird. This may explain the plot holes and uneven story as they attempt to salvage the movie. I think it's the worst out of the franchise, and they clearly went the wrong way creatively with the series. 5 years later, MI3 arrived, directed by J.J. Abrams, who seems to have a knack at reinventing film franchises. It felt like a soft reboot of the series, feeling very much like a modern spy thriller with a heavy use of technology, giving existing fans what they wanted, but also appealing to newcomers. The casting of Simon Pegg gave the series a slice of comedy, and helped build up Ethan Hunt's IMF team, which certainly needed an overhaul. It didn't require you to have seen the others, as it could happily be a standalone movie. It had great action, performances, and a great villain played by the late Philip Seymour Hoffman. Brad Bird took over for the fourth film, Ghost Protocol, which shows that a director whose career mainly dealt with animation could successfully direct live action, proving himself to be a very competent director. The fourth movie proved the most successful out of the entire series. With number 5, Rogue Nation, out now, this series is managing to maintain its quality and its direction. Thanks to J.J. Abrams, it has given the producers a clear path and direction to stick with, and it seems to be working extremely well. If you want to know my views on Rogue Nation, you can find a review on my channel. I saw Mission Impossible on the first weekend of its release in the UK, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a movie that didn't hold your hand, and you had to stay focused on all the characters and how the story unfolds. If you have a short attention span or struggle to follow a movie with many twists and turns, you may end up getting lost very quickly. The movie does help you catch up once Ethan discovers Jim's plan. All the pieces of the puzzle do eventually slot into place, but the many rewrites may have left the film a bit difficult to follow, requiring added scenes of exposition to help the audience catch up. But this is what I love about the film. The audience is left wondering who to trust, like they are in Ethan's shoes. His life is on the line and he's always close to being caught. This is what makes a great spy thriller. Nothing should be too simple and straightforward. It should be a puzzle to solve. Tom Cruise is indeed the big star of the movie, and being the producer, he has a huge responsibility, and he doesn't slack off at all in his performance. He is so intense and dedicated to the role. Tom is always great at showing his anger and frustration. When he loses his temper with Claire and declares Jim and the team are dead, you totally believe what he is saying and doing. I think Tom always gives his best with his performances, but with all stars who become so famous, it's hard to watch a movie and believe in the character because you just end up thinking it's Tom Cruise playing Tom Cruise. it's hard to break down those walls and to be fully invested in their performance. I think casting well-known actors as part of the IMF team and having them killed off in the first part of the movie is a pretty ballsy move. They could have just hired a bunch of unknowns and it probably wouldn't have made a difference. The problem is that you're not given much time to know them. There is just enough dialogue to give you time to know their role within the team, but we the audience are kind of thrown into a movie where you are expected to know them. It gives you a quick mission that they take part in before the credits start, but I don't think it's enough for the audience to get behind them to feel any sadness or injustice for their deaths that transpire a short while later. It's like it's been written from the perspective of a sequel or a continuation of the series, but we know Jim Phelps is the only returning character. One of my favourite moments in the film is when Ethan bumps into Jim and quizzes him about the night of the failed mission. He pieces together the events in his head, but doesn't let on that he knows Jim is lying to him, but plays along with Jim's explanation and the reasonings as to why he did what he had to do. This is the key scene in which Ethan fits together the puzzle for himself and leads Jim and Max into a trap. Ethan appears to be working against the IMF and has gone rogue, but it's all part of his master plan to restore his credibility and name within the IMF. The production design by Norman Reynolds is really effective in creating something that homages the original show, but also makes the film unique. If you remove the technology used in the film, it could essentially be set in the 60s. Locations stay away from modern architectural features, so it doesn't really feel like a movie from the mid-90s. Obviously, when you see the Mac laptops and the early use of the internet, you are pulled back to the 90s, and could argue it feels dated now. But it has an atmosphere and style of lighting that doesn't push to make the film feel contemporary, unlike the sequels which feel extremely modern and of their time. If you were a hardcore fan of the original series and grew up on it, you will probably be upset with the direction the movie takes and the introduction of new characters, as the only returning character turns out to be the bad guy. Several cast members of the original series did react negatively to the film. Actor Greg Morris, who played Barney Collier in this series, was reportedly disgusted with the film's treatment of the character Jim Phelps, and he walked out of the theatre before the film ended. Peter Graves, who played Jim Phelps in the original series as well as in the late 80s, also disliked how Phelps turned out in the film. Peter had been offered the role of playing Phelps in the movie, but turned it down when he learned his character was going to be revealed to be a traitor. Other members of the cast felt it was just a basic action movie, and with little connection to the original mission-based show. The films all include an impossible mission scenario, but that's usually only one set piece that defines the film. In the 96 film, you have the amazing sequence in Langley headquarters, which is still one of the best and most intense scenes out of all the movies. It's small in scale, but just as nerve-wracking as anything done in the sequels. The 96 film feels more grounded in reality with its stunts and set pieces. The end sequence can be viewed as a bit over the top as the helicopter explodes and he flies towards camera, but I think that's a great payoff for the finale of the movie. It needed to go off with a big bang, and certainly gives the audience something thrilling and exciting. I can safely say the first Mission Impossible is my favourite out of the series. It seems the most unique out of the bunch. Despite the conflicts on set with Tom Cruise, Brian De Palma does a great job with the material, and I believe holds the film together to stop it feeling incoherent and totally confusing. Brian makes great use of the CinemaScope lens, and with the help of lighting cameraman Stephen Burham, creates a great looking movie. De Palma gets great performances out of all the actors, and I don't think anyone out of the cast faulted or did a lousy job. Out of the entire series, De Palma is certainly the most interesting and most prolific director. He has done a large variety of movies, and has shown himself to be successful in many genres, which is a great hallmark of a talented director. He can tackle anything. The movie is nearly 20 years old, and is dated on a technical level surprisingly well. The big sequence at the end still holds up, and the stunts are still thrilling. If you have returned to the series recently, the first one may feel like the odd one out, but it feels more in line with the original TV show, despite what the original cast members thought of it. The Mission Impossible film series has been great on a technical level, but with regards to story, I always find myself returning to the first film far more often than the sequels. It has the feeling of a proper spy thriller, rather than an action-driven tech movie. Despite the films from number 3 onwards being very entertaining, they lack the charm and feel of what made the first film so memorable for me.
Black Barnes. He's under until he decides to surface.
Look, we can use somebody at the embassy, involve the local authorities. We can cut off his transportation.
What can we do, Barnes? Put a guy at the airport. How many identities do you think Hunt has? How many times has he slipped past customs, in how many countries? These guys are trained to be ghosts.
What was your deal with Job?
$6 million. I'll give you the same, but I want the complete list now, not just Eastern Europe. I won't do this piecemeal. It's too dangerous. I want the entire list.
10 million. 10 million in negotiable U.S. Treasury certificates and bearer form coupons attached. And one more thing. Your personal assurance that Job will be at the exchange.
Ethan's right behind me. We take the money. Ethan takes the blame. Ethan.
If you enjoyed the video, you can find more on my YouTube channel, and also you can follow me on Twitter. If you want to help support the channel, you can donate through Patreon and receive monthly perks such as updates on the latest news on my channel, early access to reviews and commentaries before they go live on YouTube. Even the smallest donation can help keep this channel going. Thank you.